What's up, YouTube? Welcome to another live stream here on Logical, Plausible, Probable. It's pretty late. I had a long day. Just got done with a debate with the one and only Ron Garret over on SFT. It was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. I want to say thank you to Ron for taking the time and potentially making his wife wait a little bit to have a great dinner. So thanks so much for sharing your time with us and your thoughts on the great question of whether or not our existence is dependent on an intelligent designer, or if it is all just the result of evolution through natural selection, laws of large numbers, and no matter how improbable, somehow it is possible that we exist through an undirected, or the lack of directed agency. So, I mean, it was interesting. It was a very interesting conversation. I found it rather intriguing how he relied so heavily on the people supposedly doing the research that we should just believe everything that they have to say, and that they just proven this is the most reasonable conclusion, which I find very interesting when you really consider what are the implications of the different discoveries that have been made in the relatively recent past of things like I briefly discussed in the context of like microRNAs. It's like, okay, so we've got this sequence over here that's not necessarily part of the gene. It's getting expressed based on a time variable and taken to maturation in a completely separate process that has no interaction with the chemical reactions that are happening over here with the gene that's being sequenced. And then they both end up in a specific location prior to the ribosome attaching and executing the sequence. But now with this microRNA, this sequence results in an entirely different protein. I mean, to me, when you think about that and the foreknowledge variables that are required to be accounted for to have that be taking place, to conclude that in a structured process can somehow have come into existence because somewhere in information theory and probability, somehow that might have, it could theoretically occur. That's just one piece. And that's one of the things I find so interesting about these debates is so many of the folks I go up against, and so many of the comments that I see, it's, oh, well, it's possible that this one little microcosm could have happened. It could happen. I'm like, okay, so you agree that one is extraordinarily unlikely, but hey, there is a possibility. So, okay, fine, that one happened. How do you account for the other 100,000 of the things that shouldn't be possible to happen that somehow did happen, and then also somehow those things just magically happen to be able to result in a modification to one of the other things that shouldn't have happened? Oh, and all of these things together result in life. I mean, that's why I find it just so interesting of how people view these conclusions as the rational, logical, plausible, and probable conclusion to reach, and say that if somebody like myself is not accepting all of those elements, that somehow I'm not being able to understand their argument or just not seeing how it's possible. And it's like, no, I understand what you're saying. What I'm saying is that there is no other scenario in which something that is that stunningly unlikely would happen and you not think that it was caused by an intelligent agent. I mean, when you think about like a lottery, for example, and let's say to win the lottery, you have to successfully pick 1,000 numbers, not randomly. They've got to be in a specific order. You got to pick 1,000 numbers on 100 different cards at the same time in order to win. And all of them have to be correct on all 100 of the cards with 1,000 different variables. If somebody actually won that lottery, I would wager your initial reaction and the very likely conclusion after investigation would be that there was manipulation of the balls that rolled out, of the 100,000 balls that rolled out in context of this these sequences have to be correct. And that doesn't even come close to accounting for what we're talking about in terms of the requirements for life, and then the ongoing supposed evolution of new what's up, Smokey? Hey, if you want to come on and talk for a bit, let me put the link here. Just start looking at chat. What's up, Honest Angel? I didn't answer my question. Even if the evidence is horrible, it would still be the best evidence in his view. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I really liked Ron. He's a very nice guy. It was very interesting how he didn't really want to answer a question that was, directly posed. Smokey, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, man, what's up? How you doing?
Oh, pretty good. Had a long
just
day.
Saw your live stream there. Figured I'd pop in. I didn't even know you had a debate.
Yeah. It was kind of wasn't a rush, but we talked a little bit on SFT had set it up. Asked me if I wanted to do it with Ron Garret. It was fun. It was interesting.
What was it mainly about? Fill me in real quick.
So we were talking about it was intelligent design versus evolution through natural selection.
No, lovely.
We were discussing it in the context. A lot of it was in the context of okay, well, here's a whole bunch of new variables that have been discovered recently. My position was, okay, so you're postulating that evolution is this proven position to take, and I'm saying that per their own literature, the evolutionary biologists are freely admitting that some of the things that a decade ago they argued were 100% true, proven. Oh crap! This new variable completely debunks a gigantic percentage of what we were just arguing.
Yeah, it's a little ridiculous how they fixate on this whole thing of proof for God and yet seem to think evolution is proven. There's just a weird cognitive dissonance going on here. I just don't understand.
Yeah, it really gets. I've noticed a significant trend with different people, in these debates, specifically on evolution ID and stuff, and that cognitive dissonance you're talking about. It's an extraordinarily prevalent component of okay, so all right, cool. Law of large numbers. It's theoretically possible. Is it plausible? Well, probably not. Okay, well, if it's not plausible that it could happen, then why are you arguing that it's 100% or as close to 100% proven that your position that you just admitted you don't think is plausible happened? I don't really understand how that makes any sense.
Just out of curiosity, how often do you kind of bring up the Cambrian explosion and kind of into your arguments or paths? This is one of the things I noticed the other day. It is I did a little brief research. The Cambrian explosion has all 70 of the animal phyla all 70 of the terrestrial animal phyla to ever exist on Earth in it, and it's a span of only about 10 million years. How did we get that much massive amounts of speciation which basically represents pretty much all the base level speciation of everything that we got on Earth and everything since. We haven't had any new things pop up out of this. They're all accounted for as the base ancestors in this Cambrian explosion. How does this not destroy evolution? I mean, in my mind, this is like untenable. How does this not destroy evolution?
Well, I'll take that a step further. I mean, there was a massive study that came out. It was the largest ever genetic study, and they did like 100,000 different animals or like life forms, right? And per their own evolutionary timeline, molecular clocks, and all that kind of analysis, every single one of the life forms that they did an analysis on had popped in, per their own math, right? Had come into existence no greater than 200,000 years ago.
Wow. And
their math also said it could also be 10,000 years ago, which I thought was interesting. But
that is interesting.
The no more than 200,000 years. So you're now taking the point you're making with the Cambrian explosion.
Right.
It's like we now have, that's fossilized evidence, right? They don't have, they don't, I mean, look at DNA and all that kind of stuff.
No. They can't. They can't.
And they can't, right?
Yeah.
The point I'm making is, okay, there's the Cambrian component. That's one major variable, right?
Right.
And then over here, you've got, all the stuff we're looking at that's alive right now, per our own math, couldn't have come into existence no greater than 200,000 years.
Right.
So if you're now going to try and apply the point you're making about the speciation stuff and how's there enough time for it, you're now having to account for literally millions of species within 200,000 years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's I mean, not even arguing old Earth, young Earth. I mean, just remove all that from the equation.
No,
The point I'm making is that just, to me, completely eviscerates the entire premise of evolution, at least based on their current model, right? Which is kind of the point I was making in my debate tonight was, okay, well, here's all these things that are, per their own admission, are destroying the foundation of modern synthesis.
Yeah.
Hey, we got to come up with something new because all this stuff we're finding kind of smashes modern synthesis. Like, it's kind of over. This doesn't work anymore, right?
Radical.
And then you start factoring these additional variables. That's why I keep, I know I repeat myself a lot, but what is the most logical, plausible, and probable conclusion? Like your piece of data after a piece of data, evident, discovery. Like, at some point, you have to look at the big picture and be like, okay, I can continue to argue based on this one little dot that hasn't been disproven yet that my entire theory is true,
right?
While ignoring all the other stuff that says it's false.
Exactly. No, and that is one thing I really think if I would get into a debate, like an actual pointed debate with an evolutionist, I think I would want to place upon them a desire to tell me what they think falsification criteria looks like for evolutionary theory. Because no, seriously, because and I've heard Matt Dillahunty and many other people say this, and they'll say this to Christians: if your beliefs aren't falsifiable, they're not worth respecting.
Yep.
Okay. And I've heard them all say that. Now, evolution has gone a long ways with a whole lot of assumption and postulation and pontificating and baseless assumptions. And every time we ask them, what will falsify this philosophy that you people keep, adhering to? What would falsify this to you in your mind? They don't have an answer. And that really bothers me.
As you kind of alluded to, the arguing that we're the ones that are dancing around. I'm like, you're literally saying that there is no goalpost.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they do.
I don't know how I can possibly falsify your argument if every time I falsify your argument, you just move it. Or as Dillahunty says, well, I just don't know yet. And I'm like, okay, so
that's what it is, man.
You're freely admitting that no matter what I argue, you're going to say, I don't know if that proves your point.
I'm telling you, bro, it's the I don't know of the gaps. That's what it is.
I don't know. You didn't hear the debate. I tell you something that I found out. I was reading about since the last time you and I talked, actually, on this whole phenomenon of grasshoppers and locusts.
Yeah.
Did you know that did we talk about this on the phone?
I don't think the grasshopper, maybe briefly. You
Okay,
might have
so
briefly mentioned it.
I think I just found out this a couple days ago. Anyway, did you know that all locusts are grasshoppers?
No.
And not only are they grasshopper, not all grasshoppers are locusts, but all locusts are grasshoppers. And not only that, the grasshopper turns into the locust.
Are you for real?
Yes. They literally undergo the physical change, right? But here's the irony. One of the things that's very, very intriguing is nothing in their genome changes. But in literally hours or less than a day, their wings shorten, their body shrinks, legs get longer. I mean, all this crazy stuff.
What
happens, right?
the hell, man?
And here's where it gets even crazier. It can go back to being a grasshopper.
Oh, that is.
Well, it doesn't necessarily go back to being a grasshopper. It can also, if it reproduces as the locust, what it reproduces is a locust, but it has the exact same genome as the grasshopper.
What the hell is that?
Okay, so here's where one of the components that I was making my debate tonight, and multiple bases is we are starting to recognize and realize the significance of the supposedly junk non-coding regions of the genome, right? And we're also starting to recognize their significance to phenotypes and overall body plan and all that kind of stuff. However, from the evolutionary model, it's basically been ignored, and we've said, oh, well, if the coding genes for the proteins are the same, they must be evolved from the other ones, right?
Right.
But we're now finding out that all this other stuff is what actually causes the body plan. And that stuff has massive disparities between it and the coding portion, right?
Right.
So if a grasshopper can turn into a locust purely through a shift in the regulation of
the not the non-coding section, nothing to do with
the regulatory functions, like the non-coding region is not all of it, but a huge portion of it. Those are like the regulatory factors, right?
Okay, right.
And so those things basically click for all intents and purposes. Hey, we're going to go from template A to template B.
If the
click,
genome
shift, and then cascade effect, and now you've got this new deal here, right?
That's crazy. Dude, it's a transformer bug. It's not even a bug. It's a Decepticon. Like, that's an alien, man. That's an alien invader.
Right, but when they went into when they kind of figured this out, like, holy crap, like the grasshopper becomes the locust. Like,
that's
whoa, all right. When they were actually, finally technology got to the point where they actually could go and do an analysis of the genome, it was like, huh, what?
That is crazy.
The same genome. What is going on? So from the arguments I like to make about the whole pre-programming aspect is, if that isn't a pretty blaring bell that says, hey guys, guess what? There's a pre-programmed body plan shift that exists in synchronicity or simultaneously inside of the same data set, right? You shift it slightly and here's a new thing, right? So when you think about that from the context of where all the species come from, all this kind of stuff, right? It's like, okay, well, let's think about this for 1 second. If God, when he created things, pre-programmed the originals with a whole plethora of templates, if you will, inside of
absolutely.
And you think about that, like, okay, these exist. And here's something I actually found out recently.
I wrote a whole little thing about it. I called genetic condensing or something like that. But no, go ahead.
Well, one of the things I've learned about recently, which I thought was very interesting, was that different organism or animals that have been identified kind of like, okay, we think this is would have been the parent, right? Of all the subspecies.
Right.
It turns out that all of those have more chromosomes than the ones below.
Right.
So it's like this African bull, for example, has 64 chromosomes.
Whoa.
64. Okay.
Whoa.
But then it's the subs have fewer and fewer and fewer chromosomes.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, what does that
that's breeding out.
Basic deduction, right?
Breed out. That's what happens when you breed out. That's exactly what happens when you breed out creatures. It's what happens when we've done it with dogs. It's the exact same effect.
Exactly. So when you think about that, it's like, that shows that you had to have pre-existing information and instruction and body plan and all that other stuff.
Absolutely. Had to start with it.
So how does it, if we're observing that, we know we can not just deduce, but like do an analysis, like say, okay, here's what's happened. Now there's less genetic information than the previous. That means it had to have existed before, right? Hello.
Exactly.
This isn't rocket science. I mean, I know
Exactly.
I know you get what I'm saying, but it's like, let's just think about this for a second, folks. You are arguing, evolutionists. You're arguing that the reciprocal is what happened, even though we have observable evidence that we're seeing a reduction in the possibilities.
I'm still not convinced. You haven't given me proof, sir.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe there was like a hyper mutation phase where it just like created all these body plans that weren't being expressed, and then
I actually read something interesting. I think it was on National Geographic today about the Galapagos finches. And now this is very interesting and right to the point of our topic, is that as they actually now have been studying the finches on the chain of Galapagos, is they've been finding very interesting things in their DNA, and that they're not quite so isolated, separate species as they thought they were. In fact, they're actually interbreeding with each other. Even some of the different beak-sized ones are also occasionally intermingling. And what they're discovering is that all of these species are basically just crossbreeds or bred out perspectives of an original finch that had originally come to the Galapagos 2 million or so years ago. So whenever that finch arrived here, it just bred out into the many different versions of finches that are now on the island there today. And they're discovering that by studying the DNA, which really changes the perspective of how we're really judging this idea of natural selection. It could be, like you had pointed out, if we had somehow dug up an ancient Chihuahua and an ancient Greyhound, we would think these are completely different species. Look at how many mutations it would take to get this. And really, they're just, ancient bred out animals, But we would look at it and say, look at evolution.
Yeah. It honestly is, to me, in my opinion, it's getting to it's starting to get almost sad when you really think about the level. It's like, wow, congratulations on the extraordinary level of creativity that you're leveraging to come to these conclusions,
right?
And like extrapolations. And I made the point to Ron Garret, the guy I was debating tonight. I'm like, okay, so phylogeny, you do realize the entire concept of how they're supposedly showing all this, inter-family relationships, all this kind of stuff, is they're taking like, hey, the part of this sequence is similar. Let's write an algorithm to figure out what would have had to have happened in order for this to become this.
Right.
Not, hey, we're observing this, any of that kind of stuff. It's what would had to have happened for this to have happened.
Exactly.
And they admit this in their papers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny when you actually read some of the more recent ones, they're admitting that now that things like they're having to account for like microRNAs, for example,
right?
They're getting seriously skewed data, like big time.
They're finding out that a bunch of creatures that they thought were directly related aren't related at all. It's making a mess of
that plus like, oh, wait a minute, from the evolutionary tree that we're being able to analyze, and at least from their perspective, with microRNAs, actually we're more related to elephants. From the proteins were more related to, insert whatever, I forget exactly what it was. And I'm like, okay, so this is what you guys are figuring out, that either we're all somehow, intermingled, which per your own arguments would be false, right? Like you guys say that they're all separate once they get to, common answer, but split. You've been arguing and telling everybody who disagrees with you that they're just wrong. Now there's evidence that says that, you're the one that's wrong. And I'm arguing that, no, we just have a designer that used similar components in different things for the exact same freaking baseline function.
Exactly.
And then created customizations for variable species. Like this is, what else would you be doing as a developer, as a software developer, an engineer, all that kind of stuff? You'd be like, I'm going to use this widget for this basic function. And then I'm going to use a similar widget, but I'm going to customize it for this custom function. And then, anyway, that stuff just fascinates me, how people can't see that. connection.
No, I completely agree with you. And I mean, the arguments for descent, speciation through descent through evolution are the same arguments essentially for shared design. I mean, no creationist would ever pose the idea that it's good to have a whole bunch of different designs in a similar environment. You want to have similar designs and similar structures that are like everything here on Earth needs to be able to have water as its basic life source function. It's one of the most what is it? It's actually a miracle substance, really. It's extremely low viscosity, very low likelihood of it even being able to appear in a liquid state on a planet at all. You know, I mean, it truly is a miracle substance, and it is the basis on which all life is built off of. So all life using water as the base building block would generate the simplest of life, which would be the basic building block that would have to support everything else. So it's just the idea that somehow, because it's by a designer, it has to have different designs. Well, look at what the designer was able to do with the simple design of the arm. What do they call it? Pedidactyl limbs, where it's the single bone, double bone, 5 bones. Yep. And look, we have feet and hands, completely radically different functions, same design. Same thing with every other terrestrial animal out there, all based upon the same design. Even all the ones that aren't even related to each other by any type of phylogenetic tree or cross relation. These are all convergent evolutionary things that have manifested. This is what screams, no. This is not just something that popped up in a utilitarian sense, which, by the way, that's what evolution is. It's purely utilitarian. If it's not useful, it gets thrown away. If it's useful, it's kept, right? That's how it works. So why would it create the exact same type of design across the board for every single type of terrestrial animal? It doesn't make sense.
Well, I mean, that's very well put, and I just don't. Well, you brought up a very good point earlier of the cognitive dissonance that is being exemplified in what we're these interactions and what we're observing, even with very, very intelligent people. It's like, it's why I like to use the phrase of, in any other context, would you think this is rational?
Yeah, right.
I
like that.
I don't know how else to put it. We're ultimately trying to form conclusions and opinions and, deductions and inductions and everything else. And I'm like, so you're relying on an inference for phylogeny, for example. It's freely admitted that it's an inference. But you're saying that my inference isn't valid as evidence and shouldn't be treated as evidence when you freely admit that you're using an inference as evidence. Like, have we ever heard of a double standard? Because I'm pretty sure that qualifies.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I actually thought of something interesting the other day too. What if just by some crazy, coincidence that we discovered some sort of non-carbon or non-biological life form or nanobot or something like that? Would the atheists think automatically that had come through some naturalistic means when it has, all the evidence of possibly being designed and created, because we know that type of life doesn't tend to naturally exist, so it must have been constructed somewhere? Do you think they would still be reaching for naturalistic reasons
it's
to
interesting
explain that level of intricacy?
It's interesting you bring that up. In my live stream the other day, one of the guys I was talking to, he actually posed the question to me about self-replicating robots on Mars, and if we found them. And I'm like, okay, well, what do you think? And he's like, well, after I did some investigation, I would conclude they were designed. And I'm like, okay, so why are we arguing about whether or not it's reasonable to conclude that a designer must have been required when you just admitted that even if you never found out who the designer was of the replicating robots on Mars, you would conclude that there was a designer that created the self-replicating robots on
why
Mars.
couldn't they naturally have occurred on Mars? Why do you jump to the assumption that they had to be there? They could have just appeared naturally, right? Don't you guys believe in naturalism?
Well, this is where the trash talkers like speed of sound come into the equation. Says he's in the Maddox delusional dilemma. He operates from a strict materialist perspective, and thinks that logic is material rather than immaterial. So I'm not really sure which one of us is in a delusional dimension, speed of sound, but I would say more people would agree with me that logic is not a material component. You want to talk about that, Smokey? I know you have some thoughts on that.
If you believe in materialism, you are by matter of fact delusional. I'm sorry. No. I'm not trying to be obtuse about it, but it's just a nature of fact. And if you spent 5 minutes Googling the scientific evidence, actual scientific evidence of near-death experiences, you would realize that naturalism is just false. Materialism is just false. There is something else out there. I mean, even in quantum physics, we know that there's something else out there. So you are just being scientifically illiterate, and you're also just being delusional.
Hey, Smokey, he just told you to read a book.
Read a book, sir. That's radical. That's funny. Is that the atheist get out? Like go read a book. Like you're clearly quoting things from books, but go read a book. Is that atheist intelligence right there?
Well, did you have you seen my video on atheist Fantasyland projection complex?
No, I have not. It sounds like a good watch.
So I just I did one that a couple days ago, and talked about I wonder what some common symptoms are of atheist Fantasyland projection complex. So I did 6 of them. I'm actually working on some more. I'm gonna do some more videos on. And then I did another one on 4 ways to trigger an atheist.
I like stuff like that.
It's so I'm actually putting together another list.
Nice, bro. I look forward to that.
Additional symptoms of a triggered atheist who has atheist Fantasyland projection complex.
I look forward to that.
And it's actually kind of funny, man. The comments I've been getting, it's so ironic, man. They are literally fulfilling the different symptoms of that I talk about in the video, and in the comment section, it's congratulations. I'm cracking up inside, congratulations on literally doing exactly what I said you were going to do. It's so funny.
It's funny to be able to make those predictions, right?
I know. But yeah, to the point you were making on the the immaterial, I'm a basic Google search will find that it's all agreed that light is immaterial. It is massless.
I would challenge speed of sound of gravity to find me one singular reputable quantum physicist that agrees with his stance of naturalism, and I will retract my statement.
It's a strong challenge, my friend. Well, I make the same. I postulate the same sort of thing to things like on a
watch. He's gonna go. He's just now typing in. I guarantee you, what he did, he ran to Google and he's typing in Lawrence Krauss.
But doesn't Lawrence Krauss believe in nothing that's in the immaterial, not the physical? I mean, here's something interesting to me in the context of the the material immaterial. I'm okay, so they're now postulating that the components of the atom are actually quantum waves, right? And I mean, you just think about that. It's okay, so the pieces of the thing that make the other pieces aren't actually pieces. That's where we're at now,
absolutely.
And to me, when you really kind of contemplate that, it's what? Hey, that's trippy, number one. But 2, you're okay, when you start really contemplating the the measurement problem and all of those things that were starting to be extremely unavoidable, right? On the collapse, wave function collapse and all that kind of stuff. I mean, It's interesting how so many of the quantum physicists who are going down those paths and looking at that stuff, I mean, they're publicly stating that the lines between mysticism and metaphysics and physics are
Oh yeah.
blurred.
Oh
Like
no.
they're publicly stating this. Like,
Yeah,
hey,
they are.
we're
Yeah.
not making this up, folks. Like the metaphysical is starting to look pretty real here. You know?
Well, and you start to realize that you have to deal with entirely different realms of logic to even even start to understand what's going on, with even quantum entanglement and even the smallest of particles. I mean, we are dealing with a level of complexity of just almost untenable fathoms. Like, I mean, really, it's incredible.
Well, when you think about the original Schrodinger's cat thought experiment, right?
Right.
And okay, you can kind of wrap your head around that. And then now they're postulating that it's not that Schrodinger's cat was in both places; it's that it was in neither.
Right.
Until I mean, to me, when you kind of think about that, it's like, wait a minute, it didn't exist until
Right.
it did exist.
Right. Right.
Okay, cool. I mean, I find that extraordinarily fascinating to contemplate. But,
Oh yeah.
But that has so many components of just in terms of the existence question, right? Of
Absolutely.
if we're getting down to where the conscious variable can make something that literally wasn't there be there, and we're not talking about like Fantasyland magic man in the clouds, sky daddy, like the atheists love to spew. We're talking about like no, we're literally being able to like we're experimenting and seeing this kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's
No.
Did you ever read that paper I sent you on retrocausality?
I did actually. And actually I thought it was really, really interesting. It gave me a few thoughts on the perspective of our relativity in the universe. And let me ask you a question, because I had this thought. If we were to suddenly and randomly be able to go to the speed of light, would we be, in your perspective, a state of timelessness? Or, I mean, but our time would be relative to our relative position in the galaxy going the speed of light. We would all of a sudden transpose ourselves outside of the relative time frame of all of the other matter in the universe. Are you following me?
I am completely. I mean, and I think that's one of the.
I mean, we would be timeless in relativity to the universe, right, but not to us inside our state of traveling. Get what I'm saying?
And here's why. In that we won't dive into this into great detail in terms of like the abstract.
Right? No. I was kidding, because
no. Where I'm going with that is I've thought about that pretty extensively. The point you're making there, and it's why I find the whole premise of the soul being immaterial or having the ability, because right now, and I think pretty much everybody agrees with this, the only barrier to be able to have enough energy to reach the speed of light is the whole, the mass and all that kind of stuff, right? As soon as you remove the mass from the equation, going the speed of light is not a problem.
Exactly.
It's only if you have the mass.
Exactly.
So if the mind and ultimately the soul is ultimately immaterial when we leave the mortal coil, then everything you're talking about is completely reasonable.
Yeah, our attachment to time is now completely separated from that of all the rest of the physical time space that our body was tied to. So yeah, it makes perfect sense to me.
And that's why it doesn't mean that you couldn't necessarily. And this is where the whole aspect of taking physical form, if you have the ability to control it, right, from a consciousness perspective, in my opinion, takes on a whole new dynamic, right? So if the collapse of the immaterial into the material, is a capability of consciousness, right, then it doesn't mean that you can't have the physical form. It just means you're not forced to stay in that physical form, right? In the matter form.
Exactly.
And I mean, so many people want to just dismiss that concept. I'm like, why? We're observing it we're observing this with light and electrons and we're observing this exact premise in experiments. This is not some hypothetical.
I think people are scared of questioning. Excuse me. I think people are scared of questioning what they've already come to accept about their mortality. and their end and what they're facing, and I don't usually try to make a big thing about trying to convince people about my perspective of afterlife theology, because I don't necessarily feel like I need to change someone's perspectives or rob them of hope necessarily if they have a different perspective than mine. I have my own perspective that's just mine, and I don't tend to usually share it. But I do, to me, it's important to try to approach it with the highest level of rationality and approach to, also physical and scientific revelation as I can. I think I would probably get condemned by some for that, but this just seems to be the more sensible path to me, to know that I'm believing something correct.
Completely. And that's I take a very similar mindset. I mean, obviously in you and I's debate, when we both were like, we're not going to we'll have another debate, right?
Gladly.
But we're not, this one, we're talking about the point you just made of
Right.
like, I don't believe this just because of religion. Like,
Right.
and I think that's another example of the cognitive dissonance you were referring to. Like,
Right.
that seems to be a hard break that they can't overcome or seem to contemplate, which is you do realize there is a separation between theism and a specific religion.
Yeah.
Like, this is and you know more about philosophy than I do. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's been a rather well-established premise in the world of philosophy for quite some time. Is that a fair statement?
Restate it. I'm sorry.
That the concept of theism is not necessarily in philosophy. The premise of theism is not directly tied to a religion. It can be applied to a religion, but it is not tied to it or dependent upon it.
Because theism can fall under everything from deism, which is of course just a non-interactive God at all, a God that basically just created the universe and let everything go. Deterministic type God, Einstein's type of God, basically, or all the way down to a directly personal, individual Christian type of God. Theism, at least as I understand it on a philosophical level, is interpreted to be anything in that wide range of claims of a deistic creator or a deistic all-eternal deity. So at least that's how I understand it. So you could be arguing anything from deism down to Christianity, it doesn't matter. Or you could be arguing multiple. And I think in our debate, that's kind of what we were doing. Like, take your pick of whichever God you think will fill the criteria that we're pitching to you and now answer our arguments. Because, ultimately, which God it is a matter of falsification criteria. You have to actually compare the God claims and falsify them in comparison to themselves. A real easy one, simple right off the bat, is Islam. Islam validates the Bible, validates the 7th century Torah, as it calls it, of course, and the 7th century Injil, which is the gospel, does so all throughout chapter 7 and chapter 5. Muhammad himself swears on the book. So Muhammad verifies the Bible, and the Bible condemns Muhammad. So Islam, trying to verify itself, verifies the Bible and falsifies itself in the process. That's easy. Islam's falsified. Simple. But, you get to some of the other religions, you have to look at it a little bit more intensely, potentially with Buddhism and Hinduism, because they have very, very loose perspectives of what they are and lots of different camps and trains of schools and ways of, even Buddhism, most of them will even admit there's multiple different paths to get to your deification, your self-nirvana, whatever it is, your enlightenment state. You have to choose and take the path that's going to be right for you, essentially, and which teacher and which sage and which, you know how it is. But yeah, no, theism, I think even in some of the Hindu beliefs, you could argue for theism in some loose regard, because again, you're just kind of going to this higher dimensional claim. Like there's something else outside here that seems to have infiltrated our reality and set it in a certain way. And, what was it? There was a fine tuner on Modern Day Debate just the other day, on Tangelo or something like that is his name.
Yep, on Monday.
Yeah. And I watched a little bit of it, but he had said something that was really a good argument. He had said something along the lines of, it can only be one of three things. Either there's an intelligence behind it, there's no intelligence behind it, and it's a product of chance, or 3, it's necessary. Like it's required, like it's automatic, like all these constraints, fine-tuning constraints in the universe are just necessary, are regulated by each other, basically. Like you wouldn't be able to have a different amount of matter because this other one constrains that, basically. Well, we know that's false. And we know that there's no way in any type of probability it could have come from chance. So that leaves the only other plausible solution to be its intelligence that's done this. And all the astrophysicists admit, yeah, it looks like someone's been up there tinkering, not just with the universe, but the solar system, the Earth, the orbit, the sun, everything. I mean,
and that's part of the reason I find it so interesting. And actually, it was interesting. The gentleman I was debating tonight, he kind of put forth that whole, there's billions of stars and there's, innumerable stars. Therefore, there's planets. Therefore, law of large numbers. There must be another, Earth planet with the same conditions as Earth.
Bad logic.
And I'm like, yeah, I mean, theoretically, there could be, but you still have to go back to reasonable plausibility. And when you're looking at all of to the point you just made of like, yeah, well, this directly looks like, based on everything else we're observing, it looks like this one was custom made. And I was actually pretty funny. I was talking with a friend of mine the other night, and he was, he's looked into stuff in like our solar system and stuff.
Right.
And he was cracking up. He's like, yeah, man, if you actually, it was so funny when I was researching this about like all these, the different variables, you'll find that basically every single one of them, the conclusion is an asteroid hit it. And he went and started like pulling up stuff. And it was like, sure enough, we think this probably occurred because of a large asteroid that must have struck it. It like went after, one after the other. It must have been an asteroid that did it. And honestly, it was pretty funny.
Does speed of sound and gravity not know that we've discovered over 200 plus fine-tuning components to the universe, solar system, and Earth that have allowed physical life to manifest? Does he not know that? Is he speaking in ignorance?
I'm not sure. He may know them, but
because he's saying
he's the strict materialist.
He's saying intelligent design for the solar system now. Does he not know there's like a dozen different components that we've discovered fine-tuned for our solar system alone? Like, seriously? Really? Like, bro, like at this point, you're just kind of speaking out of ignorance. You might want to go do a little quick research. You are embarrassing yourself. Seriously. You're a little out of your depth here on this one.
I remember reading about the like the whole aspect of Jupiter's position.
That like, alone.
Hey, we would be annihilated. We would be absolutely annihilated without Jupiter. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Not just us. We'd also have a cataclysmic sun, and there's multiple other horrible things that would happen with even Jupiter having a minor misalignment. It's devastating. It's devastating for the whole solar system.
I love how Speed of Sound is now trying to make a appeal to authority.
Don't they love that too? And they'll just call us appealing to authority whenever we bring out an actual Christian cosmologist. Isn't that amazing? Just the hypocrisy is just grotesque.
Well, and even, I mean, heck, there's more than a few atheists who freely admit it at least appears to be.
Right.
And it's like, oh, well, I'm going to come up with a hypothesis of why it's not. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't look like it is. Paul Davies has done that on many occasions. Like, both in terms of the universe.
Wait, hold on. Sorry. I just have to answer him. He says, find me a list of cosmologists that believe the universe is intelligently designed. I'll tell you what, I'll provide you that list when you provide me the list of all the scientists that agree in climate change, okay? Give me the list of the 97% that the lefties keep toting that agree that climate change is man-made, and I'll provide you that list, okay? I'm sorry. Go ahead, bro.
Oh no, I mean well, I tell you the thing that really gets me, and to the point you were just kind of referencing my same thing in my debate tonight. It was, I need a paper. I'm like, okay, I'll send you a link to them. Here's my folder. You can go look at the papers I'm referring to and reading from. But so many of these things, it's like, these aren't exactly far out there outlier questions that have been asked debunked this one, reconsidered. Here's this. Okay, yeah, we can't explain that one. That. I mean, heck, I would say that's been being discussed for on the cosmological level for a long time. But from a how does physics and everything else apply and the fine tuning elements? I mean, we're talking about what, probably a century at this point.
Yeah.
That one being like analyzed from a science, a hyper scientific perspective, right? And I think part of the was it Intelligent, and the guy from Monday you were referencing.
Ontangelo, I think.
Ontangelo. Yeah, the point you were making, and the guy he was debating kept referring back to like, well, why couldn't they have been different? And he's like, they would all have to have changed. So you're back at the exact same starting point of your question, and you were referring to that. But I mean, he repeated himself like 5 times. Like, no, they would all have to change. Well, why couldn't just one? Because they would all have to be the same to account. Like, it's like the ratios have to be the same. This is a accepted premise. They have to be the same.
So radical.
If otherwise, you have to have a completely different set of laws. Like, that's just that's no other way around it.
Yeah, that's just how life is not common, and our Earth. This is the thing. Our Earth, our planet, is not normative in the galaxy. It's just not. There's no reason to expect it's normative in the rest of the universe. And especially if we understand how these planets tend to align just by random flying matter in a universe, from a giant big bang, everything expanding and exploding. And yet somehow, miraculously, through almost an untenably understandable set of incredibly finite circumstances, we are set in a position to even be here at all. I mean, what else could you need to have evidence of some sort of higher power having done this? I mean, it's everything from the very fine tuning of matter at the beginning of our universe to our exact alignment in our galaxy, to our exact position in our solar system, to the exact composition of the other planets around us. It's so precise. It's mind-blowing, truthfully. When you consider the odds and probabilities of any one of these things coming into existence by chance, it's just the numbers are staggering.
Yeah, that's why to me, when you really start to, and it's why I make the point on a regular basis of the atheists, the evolutionists, all of them, you can present 100 pieces of evidence. If there's one that they kind of sort of disagree with, then all the other 99 no longer apply. And it's like, wait a minute. You're completely discounting the other 99 because you disagree with one? Back to the point I like to make of, in what other context would that be the rational conclusion?
Right.
I mean, in what court of law?
Yeah.
Would you ever consider that? And I don't even, a lot of times people use the whole court of law thing. I'm like, whatever. It's an example and a comparison people kind of understand. But it's like when you're slapped in the face with this much stuff, how are you? And you hit the nail on the head of cognitive dissonance. I mean, it's kind of a speed of sound. Smokey wants to know if you're a convex or a flat earther.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? This one's real sharp, bro.
We were just discussing the positioning of the planets and everything else, but no.
Yeah, right. I'm actually referring to complex cosmology, and he's like, "Are you a flat earther, bro?" That's pretty radical. That's interesting. Like, would you think I'd be able to make cosmological arguments against atheists if I was a flat earther? I don't think I'd get far. Seriously, I don't think I would get far on that one.
Yeah.
No, it's like, and he'll be like, you'll ask him like, okay, what's the shape of the Earth? And he's going to be like, it's round. They're like, oh, no, it's an oblong spheroid. See, you're an idiot. Stop being an oblong spheroid denier.
Oh man, Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about this the other day in the context of, have you seen the stuff on like the Earth's magnetic field, like going haywire in the North Pole, like shifting?
No, I didn't see anything about that.
If you haven't noticed, for like the last couple of weeks, your GPS has been like acting a little weird.
My GPS always acts weird. I'm in the
Well,
army
it's acting more weird than normal.
Okay.
Because like in the past year, the North Pole's moved like 9 miles, and
Interesting.
they think that, and I mean, it moving is not. I mean, that happens.
Right.
Usually not this much this quick, but
Right.
they're now postulating that there's like a clump of iron, I guess, that's like was together and now it's kind of like splitting off into 2 pieces, and
No kidding.
is like causing a kind of a wobble, I guess. And I was thinking about that in regards to just what, I mean, that whole portion of it just, sparked this thought if that was interesting, but when you considered something just like the magnetic field of the Earth, like that in and of itself is pretty nuts. Just when you just think about that variable in terms of the requirements for life and everything. Do we see too many other magnetic fields? Like,
no,
not too many.
No,
not like this. Sure as heck, not like this one.
Not like this one.
And I think people just take that one for granted.
I always thought it was funny when the atheists would occasionally mention to me like, well, someday string theory is going to prove naturalism and materialism. I said, what do you know about string theory? And they wouldn't be able to answer the question. It's just something they've heard some physicists say. And I say, the whole idea is that there's basically little loops at the lowest levels of our reality, lowest level of particles, little loops that have vibrations that affect exactly how matter is transmitted in our reality. So where do you think who set the fine tuning of those frequencies and vibrations in those strings? Mm-hmm. Even if we do prove that to be true, now we have another layer of potential fine-tuning, that these strings that basically set the charges of electrons in our reality could essentially prove to be set in very, very specific frequencies, or else everything falls the hell apart. So I don't, anyone that thinks string theory might prove naturalism, I think is completely out of their minds. If anything, it'll prove another layer of fine-tuning. I think that's what we would find.
Yeah, and I tell you the thing that always gets me about the potential implications for something beyond this plane of existence, right? In relation to string theory, it's like, I mean, there's I think the low end, they postulate nine dimensions, and I've seen some up to like 24, 25. I'm like, okay.
I've leaned towards the middle part around the dozen mark, because I think there's at least 3 or 4 that we don't have any capability to account for, but seem to me personally plausible enough to exist. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, no, I don't disagree with you on that, but where I'm going with all that is like, okay, at the minimum, you're projecting 9.
Right.
Okay, so how many do we currently experience? Well, sure as heck isn't 9. So if you're going to argue there's nothing beyond this plane of existence, and there's no reasonable conclusion that there could be, but you're going to argue that there's 9 dimensions, and I'm the one who's nuts, like nothing could possibly exist outside of space and time. Oh, but there's 9 dimensions that aren't necessarily bound by space and time. What?
And explain where the quantum particles go when they disappear and reappear. Where do they go? Because they're not being destroyed. No one believes they're being destroyed. So what's happening to them? Where are they going? They're going somewhere. I mean, unless we want to create a whole new different principle, which maybe we're eventually going to do, that the second law of thermodynamics, matter can't possibly be destroyed, that suddenly that changes in the quantum realm. I don't know. But I don't know how you have something appear in and out of our reality if there isn't somewhere else for it to go. Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I tell you, one of the ones that I thought was very interesting, and I know that some of the math works out, the whole like holographic projection theory, that we're all actually in 2D.
Right.
I'm like, that's kind of interesting.
Right.
when you think about it, of So we're experiencing 2D in a 3D manner, but what we're actually seeing out there is actually a 2D projection.
Right.
Huh. I mean, I thought it was kind of, I mean, it's an interesting
No, it is.
hypothesis. And I'm like, I could kind of see that being, I could see that. That's not a totally unreasonable conclusion, especially when you start to go down the whole rabbit hole of we're actually all just information anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean,
in different arrangements. Yeah.
Yep.
As amazing as it is. That's why I don't even really argue with some of the atheists that I have had some chat conversations with, and they pitch the idea of, well, this place, could just be a construct, could just be kind of like the Matrix. And I said, yeah, well, in my perspective, it kind of is. So I don't really completely disagree with you there.
Yeah. That something else is quick sidebar on biology, but I think it applies to what we're talking about now. Have you ever read any of the stuff? Read any of the stuff on how enzymes are conducting like quantum tunneling and creating coherent states and all that kind of stuff?
No, I have not heard about that yet at all.
Okay, so have you ever heard of like the quantum coherence component of photosynthesis?
Yeah, that you did mention.
Okay, fact, so take that,
and that was amazing. That's
like a fun, like a big one, right?
Right.
Well, what they're also now realizing is that, okay, so how enzymes can accelerate a reaction 6,000%, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what they're actually realizing now is that, and this doesn't apply to like every single scenario, right?
Right.
But the reason it's being accelerated is the enzyme is basically creating the bridge for the quantum tunneling to accelerate the electron transfer.
Yeah. Shut up.
So
that can't be real.
Yeah,
that can't be actually real.
And the irony is that up until really kind of this past decade, and even to an extent now, the traditional chemistry model, you were supposed to completely ignore and discount that even being a remote possibility, right?
Wow, dude.
Well, now there's been instances where they're proving no, there is no avoiding this. This is 100% happening. So now basically it's kind of one of those scenarios of it's starting to gain traction in chemistry school, but it's kind of one of those until the old farts die, it's not going to be adopted to the level that it could have been.
I got to look into that. Because that sounds radical to me.
Oh yeah, it's a mind bender when you think about it.
That sounds no, dude. Quantum tunneling down in the enzyme level, that blows my mind right out of the water tonight. Seriously.
And that concepts like that are why I think it really puts the whole ratio of 1 in 10 to the 74th are going to be a functional protein deal.
Right.
It's okay, that puts things into a whole nother context completely. Of why in the heck the rarity of functional proteins is what it is.
Exactly.
It's modifying quantum state.
Exactly.
That's kind of a big deal.
That's radical. That's a huge deal. And that completely solves the issue of the rarity, by the way. That's amazing. What an amazing factoid that is.
Yeah. And we're not just talking about one. I mean, if there was one enzyme that could do this, it would be a big deal, right?
Right.
Now we're talking about, hey, it may be that all of them do, right?
Dude.
I mean, to me, it puts things in an even cooler perspective.
It really does.
At least from my position on it.
Well, and the idea that life, in order to, because here's the thing with the idea of the enzyme rarity, the functional enzyme rarity, there is a challenge to understanding how life could progress, could evolve, could even get to this state at all, could have even got to the point of single cell organisms. It's been it is a conundrum. But the idea that life needed to have quantum machinery encoded into it in order for viability of survival, that is freaking astounding to me.
Very much agreed. I tell you the one that's got me. There's some back and forth on this one, but the whole. Have you ever read the stuff on the current, pretty well substantiated, but not 100% agreed upon yet, olfactory postulation on like how we're actually.
Oh, I think you had mentioned something about that, like how we even discern aromas, and like some have the exact same chemical structure, but we still pick them up as different smells or something.
Yeah, from being able to measure the quantum vibration.
Oh, that I didn't know. Okay, see that I missed.
And that's the cool. That's like the really crazy part. That's the piece I've been able to figure out. It's like, okay, well, we send in a molecule that's like an isotope that's slightly different, but the molecular structure is the exact same.
Right.
We're trying to see if the whole lock and key and the receptor is just based on molecular structure.
Right.
And then they find out, no, we know for sure that is not the case. So let's account for these other things. And so they've been able to find a few variations where there wasn't the difference, but basically all the other ones they've tested did. So it's like, cool, you found the one that it doesn't work on, but you've got all these other ones that does. Okay, at what point do you just accept that?
That would be amazing. That would be amazing. I would love to see additional research in that too, because that would be incredible. Like if we could find out that just the ability to smell because here's like, I don't know the type of complex smells that I think we tend to enjoy. I look at as a non-adaptive trait. Like evolution, in evolution, you need to be able to smell things for the sake of hunting and for danger. Like that's pretty much it. Like in a utilitarian sense, nature doesn't require you to be able to smell much. It's basically just essentiality for your survival. So what was the adaptive path that led us to our grotesquely complex, now potentially quantum sense of smell? You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Like what possible adaptation could you point to?
What environmental pressure is going to result?
Exactly. What could you possibly point to that would manifest this as an evolutionary utilitarian benefit to the species? Help me with that.
Well, in Sal Cordova, I've had on my show and a couple of places. He's a very knowledgeable guy in like structural biology and such.
Right.
And we were talking about this in the context of how there's tons of things about biology that are optimized to the ultimate extreme. Like there is nothing better that could possibly happen.
Right.
And from an engineering and a physics perspective. Right. And it's like, okay, we know that there are certain organisms, and we have to a certain extent, but that can literally detect a single molecule. You can't go any smaller than that. Right. Obviously there's atoms, but I mean, in terms of what's going to have the odor, and it's got to be a molecule, right?
Exactly.
If you can get down to being able to detect a single photon, you can't go any smaller than that.
Right.
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 That's where you're at. There is nothing that could possibly be better. So there's all these different aspects of biology that are at the ultimate peak.
Right.
And this goes back to the evolutionary component. It's like you're somehow concluding, while claiming this all is a piece of crap and it's junk because it's all, accidental stuff, you're claiming that things are the ultimate peak that could not possibly be better. Doesn't indicate design.
Exactly.
I mean, how do you reach that conclusion outside of cognitive dissonance?
Exactly.
And here's all the variables that are required for this ultimate peak engineering to exist. But you're going to argue that's not evidence.
Yeah.
I mean,
as you say, in what other context would you possibly look at it this way and come to that conclusion? I completely agree.
Yeah, the whole thing with the olfactory, when I was reading about that, I was like, okay, this is cool. The quantum coherence and photosynthesis. To me, that one, I think I may have mentioned this to you, and we talked, and I've ranted about this before, but in terms of the evolutionary timeline, they accept, and it's in all their literature, that they argue that photosynthesis happened very, very early on.
Yeah.
Well, if photosynthesis is dependent upon quantum state control.
Yeah.
Yeah. What gets more pinnacle than that?
Right.
And you're claiming, it all evolved after down the line stuff. Yeah. Photosynthesis happened as a precursor to all this other stuff.
Unreal.
I mean, so you're not talking about simplistic. Oh, it was just simple stuff that happened, and over billions of years. Like, there weren't billions of years for this to happen per your timeline.
No.
Think about that.
No.
quantum state manipulation.
Yeah, no, it is insane. I mean, and without that, we wouldn't have plant life. I think it was Susan the last time we had mentioned that. She said it actually begins at the seed level. The seed would have no potential to sprout or get the energy to sprout if it did not have this quantum machinery in it to handle the photosynthesis of the light.
Yep. Yeah, that whole I often wonder if the reason that concept just doesn't absolutely blow people's mind is, I wonder if A, how many people just don't even know, and then B,
well, I didn't know. I didn't know till a couple weeks ago.
Well, I know you did, but I'm saying, like, I'm talking about the people in science that are coming up with all these theories and stuff, and looking at evolution and just biology and biochemistry and physics and all those different pieces. And it's like, when you are actually, confronted with this reality, I don't know how that just doesn't completely destroy your worldview. Absolutely. To think that could happen undirected.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's like, hey guys, so do you think a quantum computer could ever create itself? Well, theoretically it could. But you're like, okay, I understand, law of large numbers, enough time, yada yada. Yes, it could happen. I got it. Cool. Yeah, in the real world, could it ever happen? And the other thing that always gets me too, I think I need to remember to start putting this forth, is, yeah, okay, cool. Your law of large numbers is theoretically possible, but mathematically there hasn't been enough time to account for what you are arguing is possible if given enough time.
Right.
There hasn't been enough time.
Right.
To account for all this stuff. So let's go back to, is it plausible?
Well, and that's what I was saying is, I kind of look at the evidence from the Cambrian explosion. I'm like, why did this not destroy evolutionary theory the moment we discovered it? You have basic, simple, single-celled life, and then you have 70 different types of terrestrial phyla just all of a sudden on the scene in a matter of $10 million year spans of time. Are you kidding me? And you think, how does this not destroy evolution? Like, I don't understand it. I don't understand.
Well, I think a portion of that stems from, I think, when that was really brought to the forefront, and you and I have talked about this before, of people not seizing the opportunity. I think so many folks had conceded that, well, they just weren't going to be able to overcome this one. I'm talking about the evolutionary argument and all that kind of stuff. And I wonder how many of them just also didn't recognize. And in fairness to that people of that time frame, a lot of the the things that we take for granted now in terms of discoveries in genetics and biology in general, that also make the whole evolutionary argument dramatically weaker. They didn't know a lot of that stuff at that point, right? So,
well, evolution has taught us that that basically, if we're looking at the evolutionary tree, it starts with simple life, spreads out to slightly more different life, and then a little bit more complex life, and so on and so forth, until we get all the massive different types of speciation. This has always been the model. This was the model when I was in school. This was the model when I was in college. This was the model that I was familiar with even in my 20s. Okay, that this is what the phylogenetic tree kind of looked like. And then I had discovered information about the Cambrian explosion, and I realized the tree is upside down. We started with tons and tons and tons of different species, and a massive chunk of those have gone extinct. We have less speciation these days than we had in the most ancient record of time that we can measure, at the point that the Earth could have complex life on it. And that's the amazing thing. I've heard the atheists make this argument. What was the point of the minor organisms and the bacteria and all the other things that were here before any type of complex life? Why did God need to have all this other stuff here? And I say they were terraforming. These were terraforming machines These raised the oxygen in the atmosphere, gave a certain infusion of minerals into the geologic column. It allowed for plant life to actually have some sort of nutrients to grow off of. It was essential. It was some of the base building blocks of everything that was needed. And then when the environment was ready for it, God created more complex life in an environment that was hospitable for it. And then that life was allowed to be able to live and condense and adapt through its own manifestation and choices, but it was given complex systems of adaptation so that it didn't just wipe itself out right away. It was intended for some species to not be able to survive, to give rise to others, which would then allow the system itself to find its own natural equilibrium. How is this not design? Help me, John.
Well, what gets me about all this is, what do we look at in terms of pretty much all aspects of science, right? We're looking at systems. And be a ecosystem, in whatever it is. There's the probability of there being a system pretty damn high, right?
Agreed.
And that's really not even disputed. That there's a system for it. Okay, are you not thinking about the significance of that? That means that in order for a system to exist, you have to have all the pieces that create the system.
Agreed.
Hello. You can't have. There is no system if all the pieces aren't there for the system.
Agreed.
Like this is. I know we've been joking about it tonight, but I'm like, in what other context would this not be designed?
Exactly.
The point you were making of how could a closed system exist without it being closed? It's I don't know, this
just
stuff,
doesn't work.
But you and I've talked about this before in regards to in the end the great delusion. I mean, I don't understand. I don't really think you can look at what you and I have been discussing tonight and our debates and everything else and different things we watch. It's like, if this isn't the literal epitome of people buying into the grand delusion, I don't know what is.
Agreed.
And it's approaching. It's approaching some pretty serious, pretty significant. And the thing that's really getting me is it's no longer being confined to, do I believe in God? Do I not believe in God? Like right. This cognitive dissonance is spreading to so many other facets of society.
Right.
In general. I mean, I think we're experiencing it right now with all the stuff that's going on. The madness is going on around the world right now. And like, what? We're going to disband police departments? I don't know if you saw that one.
Oh, it's just insane.
I'm like, what universe does it make sense that if you're trying to create a better society, you would make it so that more violence can occur?
People have lost their minds. Truthfully, people have lost their minds.
Yeah, I read an interesting article the other day that was talking about this in, like, they were looking at comparative data for like other parts of the world, where law enforcement and just the whole premise of rule of law is much rarer.
Right.
And not enforced. And they were looking at it in the context of what are the ramifications for women?
Oh, yeah.
They were looking at, I think it was like Papua New Guinea was one of the examples. And it was like 56% of the women in that country have been raped at least once.
Yeah, there's sex trafficking is a major.
I mean, it's nuts. There was like 25% of all men have raped at least 4 women.
Yeah.
In that country. I'm like, wow. I mean, you think about that.
Yeah.
That is we don't even, in modern society in the West, we don't even comprehend what that would be. I mean, your mom, sister, girlfriend, cousin, whatever, has a 50% chance of being raped. What? I mean, that's,
yeah.
I can't even contemplate that.
No, I can't either. I mean, even the statistics of the women attempting to come up to cross the border illegally, it's something grotesque, like 80% or something like that.
Oh yeah. And the young girls and everything. I mean,
yeah. Yeah, like they're actually so prone to anticipate it that they take birth control in anticipation of it. It's that terrible. Yeah.
Yeah. We modern society, we take so many things for granted.
We do.
That
We don't realize how gross the world actually is. We really don't.
Yeah. Yeah. The corruption level that is, the old adage of, the thin blue line. And I'm in no way, shape, or fashion defending. I mean, I think there is corruption that's going on in many aspects of modern society. I mean, to me,
I triggered raging atheists last night on this very topic, by the way. And I'm sorry, continue.
What I was thinking about in that whole deal was yesterday there's a 12-year-old kid. He's really smart. He's a friend of mine's nephew, and she'll call me and then like conference him in, and we'll like talk about stuff. And because he's like, man, I can't ever talk with any of the kids my age about this stuff because nobody understands. So we'll sit there and talk about history and stuff.
Right.
And I was kind of discussing, Machiavelli's The Prince, right, and that whole deal. And
great.
I was like, man, if we don't have so many of the Machiavellian type folks just like not even hiding anymore, like they're operating in plain sight now.
Yeah.
And people are living in this fantasy land that they're not actually that bad. It's like they're not even hiding it anymore.
No.
They're telling you what they're going to do to you.
Yeah.
And not you're kind of taking all this stuff for granted. You don't think that there's going to be massive ramifications if you don't wake up to reality.
Yeah. True.
It's very disturbing. But
it is. It is. It really is. And we were about to, in my opinion, as a nation, start to have a very, very important conversation about bad standards for police officers. And now we're once again talking about barely existent race issues and trying to chase after perspectives that not everyone shares, but a small minority are extremely vocal about.
There's just so many aspects to that whole deal of, I mean, to me, when you look at the moves that are being made right now, a lot of these things are just, I mean, they're very obvious pawns being placed into position.
Clearly.
And then what gets me is just the willingness and this goes back to the number one symptom of atheist fantasyland projection complex, lack of critical thinking skills. I'm like, how do you not realize that you're a complete pawn? Like they're dangling you, and you're buying into this whole deal of just, okay, I'm going to willingly be your pawn and like screw myself. Cool, thank you. All right. What? That's it takes things to like a whole new level of
it does.
Like, but I think it also puts things into context, from the eschatology perspective.
Oh yeah.
Of like, how do some of these things that are predicted to occur actually? How do they actually happen? Like, are people really this dumb?
Right.
And it's like, well, actually, apparently they really are this dumb.
Yeah.
I could definitely see how this could happen. Especially now with the level of acceleration we seem to be seeing in such a extraordinarily short period of time.
Yeah, no, it is astounding. It really is.
There's that sunrise movement. Oh yeah. I saw the GBGA. I saw that a video on that on the sunrise movement.
What is sunrise movement? I don't know what that is.
They're like a hardcore lefty group, and they are like actively recruiting kids in like middle school and high school.
No.
Like teaching them like, here's how you should riot. If you're gonna get arrested, here's how you make it difficult for the cop so you can distract them while other people are being able to pull off, this piece of the puzzle.
The anarchists always think it's a good idea to riot and stuff until it turns back on them. I mean, seriously, they think violence is a good idea until they realize they don't like it being done on them. The whole point of talking and debating and discussing these things is to avoid violence. And they think, well, we're just going to use violence to get our way. You don't think the other side isn't going to resort to the same? You really want to bring that on yourselves? Are you sure you want to start a fight? Because that I'm pretty sure you can't finish. I mean, be careful about this.
I saw a hilarious video on you. Well, disturbing and simultaneously hilarious video on Twitter earlier. And this woman was super pissed and yelling at these guys who were surrounding their like little store and were all holding guns.
Right.
And she was going off on a tangent about how they
God
shouldn't
bless
be
them.
they shouldn't be stopping her and her friends from being able to loot the store. And
Are
like,
you for real?
yeah. Like, what right do you have to be defending your store from
Are
us?
you
And
serious?
I'm like, I'm sitting there watching this video, and I mean, she was going off, dog cussing them, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, you're mad that they're not letting you loot. And you think this is an unreasonable position for somebody to defend their stuff. Like, okay. If you're actually thinking that is the, yeah. Anyway.
No, I don't. Yeah, dude, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, some of these radical groups too. I guess they're kind of moving to Antifa needs to be a terrorist organization and stuff.
Mhm.
I mean, I think they're really starting to narrow in on some of this and I saw videos, man. Antifa laying out like stacks of bricks and things like that, and trucks dropping off things for people to loot with and destroy things with. Man, there was some shady freaking orchestration, like actual terroristic orchestration going on here, man. Like this needs to be investigated and followed up to a certain level, because something real gross happened to our country and our cities and stuff, and things were incited by some sort of forces or some sort of entities. Something was organized, bro. I'm telling you.
Well, I agree. So I live in Nashville, and so we had a protest, which what blew my mind about that was, while all these other cities are burning, our mayor, who was not figuratively but literally the day before on TV and still insisting nobody's business should open, everybody stay home, all that stuff, that afternoon announces a rally, like a protest that's going to be like officially city endorsed. He's going to show up and invites the city council to come to, right?
Right.
I'm like, what? Oh, okay. That's quite literally the polar opposite of what you said this morning, but okay. So we had like 10,000 people show up, and anyway, I swung downtown and kind of checked it, like scoped it out, and then I left because I could feel the vibe after they got down, like the normal portion over at the Legislative Plaza, and everybody was, the speakers and all that kind of stuff, and then that group left, right. And then I would say no less than 1,000 people came down and surrounded the downtown police precinct. And
wow,
it was starting to get pretty intense. And our mayor had not allowed our cops, who were like standing in a line, like defending it, he had not allowed them to have any gear on. They were in shorts, holding bicycles, and didn't even have helmets, under the orders of the mayor. I'm like, are you kidding me?
What the hell?
Anyway, later on, they let some guys come in with armor. This is like probably 5 o'clock in the afternoon, right?
Right.
Anyway, so I go home. I'm like watching live streams of this, I'm like, holy crap. Anyway, it's probably like 6:30. A whole bunch of like a huge chunk of this group that's surrounding the downtown precinct just disappears. Like they just, and all the the news media, it looks like they're dissipating, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. Like I think, because like now all of the body armored like riot police and stuff are all down at this one spot.
Right.
And I'm like, it's starting to get dark. I bet you they're going somewhere else. And one of the live streams that was not from like a reporter,
right,
was obviously somebody who was like there on purpose, His feed had cut off. 15 minutes later, it cuts back on. There's like 500 people surrounding the city hall.
Whoa.
And of course, all the cops are down at the precinct.
Right.
Well, here's where it gets even more weird. So, like, probably 30 or 40 cops show up and kind of like create a line in front of the main entrance to the city hall.
Right.
And everybody's yelling and stuff, but it's like relatively calm. Much of trash talking, but nothing's violence going on.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, the cops are ordered to leave. And they literally walk down the steps, go to the street that like is perpendicular to the city hall courtyard,
Right.
and all line up in the middle of the street.
What?
And 5 minutes later, they start breaking, they go back to breaking all the windows. And 10 minutes later, the city hall is being set on fire.
No.
And I was watching a live feed from a helicopter that was like, dude,
this is in your town?
This is in my town, yeah. This is like 2.5 miles from my house, okay?
No.
And well, now it's probably this is like 3 miles. Anyway, so I'm watching it from a helicopter live feed, and you can see the cops like lining 3rd Avenue while the fire is being set. It's burning for like at least 15 minutes.
Crazy.
The fire went out. They hopped back inside the building, set the fire back again, so it's burning more, while the cops are just watching. And I'm like,
well, I don't
and
understand.
then probably 30 minutes later, a bunch of riot police show up and, like block. And then it got real and there's, tear gas going off and all that kind of stuff.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, okay. So the cops were blocking them from doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
They're ordered to move and then they're ordered to watch while arson goes down.
Mm-hmm.
How does this make any sense?
It doesn't. It doesn't. I've never seen such a thing. I couldn't imagine such a thing. I don't know. I don't know how the cops were okay with just all doing that. That's so weird to me, even. Isn't there kind of something there about protecting the peace and they seriously just let a mob torch a building? Like, I don't know where to go with that.
Well, you look at like what happened in Minneapolis, at their 3rd precinct, like the day, when the hardcore, like first day of the riots went down,
right?
The cops had that spot like barricaded. I mean, they were on the roof. They had multiple lines of defense.
Right.
I mean, guys on the roofs of surrounding buildings. I mean, crazy stuff, right? Fast forward to the evening, and the mayor ordered them to retreat. And then the looters came in and burned it to the ground.
Yeah, I don't understand it.
And I'm like, why? You have okay, let's think about it. This is a police precinct. I guarantee you they've got security doors and barricades built into that building.
Yeah, and you know what?
Like, guaranteed.
Honesty Angel made the best point. Says last month the police were stopping conservatives from going to work, and not only just stopping them from going to work, but also arresting them.
Yep.
And this month, conservatives defend police jobs. Yeah, how about that? How about that? How about the cops that were out harassing and arresting conservatives for just trying to live their lives, and now we're trying to defend them from the angry mobs? How about that? In that some interesting karma right there.
Yeah. Well, the interesting part about that is the majority of where those types of things were happening were not necessarily in the conservative areas.
Yeah.
Those kinds of arrests were happening, not all of them, but a significant percentage of them were happening in hardcore leftist cities, and states. I mean, the fact that in California they were arresting people for going paddleboarding in the freaking Pacific.
Yeah,
like, dude, you're by yourself. You sent Coast Guard to go arrest a dude who's paddleboarding by himself.
The most ridiculous moment for me, and I live in California, so I knew a few of the more ridiculous things. But Gavin Newsom, he lost a mayoral. He's our governor. He lost a mayoral election down in Newport Beach way back in the day. I don't know, 10 some odd, 15 years ago, whatever it was. And this guy shuts down Newport Beach, just the beach, and only in Newport. And all the people they're saying social distancing, you can't go on the beach because we don't want you to be crowded up. And what you have is a line of thousands of people crammed up on the sidewalk because they can't spread out on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just, you look at it and you're just like, this is America.
Yeah, that whole deal with the shutting down beaches, to me, I'm like, okay, number one,
you're like, why?
It's a known fact beyond all doubt that the atmosphere is its own sanitizing agent. Number one. Number two, we know beyond all doubt the sun, ultraviolet light, zaps freaking viruses. We know this beyond doubt. We also know beyond doubt that vitamin D generated by exposure to the sun improves your immune system, which lowers your probability of getting sick. I mean, that was, I tell you what, that honestly was one of the things that got me more than anything of the home confinement stuff. I'm like, okay, we're coming off the winter. Why do people get sick in the winter? Because they have less exposure to sunlight. It's not the only variable, but it's one of the major recognized ones.
It is one of them, true.
Then we're coming into the spring, and when people normally would be rebooting their immune system.
And also, quick sidebar, viruses tend to last on surfaces longer when it's cooler as opposed to hot out. So that you have like metal doorknobs and stuff. When it's hot out, they tend to get heated, so they can kind of sometimes sterilize themselves. Sorry.
Yep. But to me, when you think about it, like, okay, cool. Right as the daylight savings time kicks in, and hey, we're gonna have longer day, longer daytime and all this kind of stuff. But people normally would be going out, getting their immune system all revved up again.
Yeah.
We say don't do that.
Yeah. Insane.
And then you wonder why. It's like, so now you're going to make it, not only have you done that, you've also changed up their schedule, which we also know has a negative effect on your immune system.
Yeah.
And you're cutting down on exercise, which has a negative effect on your immune system. All these different things. I'm like, so you're literally making it more likely people are going to get sick.
And there's also been tons of sociological effects as well. There's been an increase in domestic crime, substance abuse, suicide, you name it. There's been an uptick in everything.
I saw there was
unemployment, homelessness. I mean, everything across the board everything terrible in the world has gone up recently.
Yeah. I actually saw there was a couple of doctors, like emergency room doctors and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They came out a couple weeks ago and said they have seen more attempted suicides in the past month than they usually do in the entire year.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah.
I mean, what do you think is the likely outcome, folks?
Yeah.
I mean, and I often wonder, outside of the Machiavellians who don't actually care, the other, like the politicians are just idiots. I often wonder if they have, the whole premise of, stuck in their ivory towers. They just do not comprehend some of this stuff, Yeah. And I had this conversation with one of my sisters one time. They're very well off. And I was talking to her. I was like, it's been, at this point, it's probably been 25 years since you have even thought about what it means to be worried about paying bills and having money for food.
Right.
I was like, you guys are very generous. You help people, all that kind of stuff, but you haven't had that experience in so long. You're going to be separated to an extent from the worldview of the person who's in that scenario. Yeah. And obviously, I mean, that logic applies to, up the food chain.
We've shot ourselves in the feet, both of our feet, by not setting term limits on some of these disgusting human beings.
That I would greatly agree with. Have you ever seen the analysis that was done on the average net worth increase of representatives and senators?
Oh God, no, I didn't, but I'm probably going to be disgusted by it.
Yeah, it's nuts. I think if I remember correctly, I think it was in 3 terms. Pretty sure it was 3 terms. The average member of the House of Representatives net worth increased. I think it was either 3 or 4x, and a senator was 12x in 2 terms. So 12 years, obviously, in that context. But and you think about that, it's like, wait a minute. So you got a job that absolute max possible income you're going to get is $218,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
A year, and you have managed to increase your net worth that much.
Yeah.
In that short of a period of time.
Yeah.
No, there's nothing to be suspicious of in looking at that data. I mean, anybody else who pulled that off, it's like either you're the most amazing investor of all time, or you had a con game going on. There's no other way around it.
Absolutely.
I mean, then you look at I'd say some of the creative, actually, these days, I'm not even being creative on it, doing it in plain sight. Like, so the politician didn't make any money or get any special stuff, but everybody in their family got contracts.
Right.
Like everybody got contracts.
It's
and sometimes, a lot of times, they're not like small ones. We're talking like
30,
40, 50, $60 million contracts.
Oh yeah.
I mean, good gravy. If that's not straight up bought and paid for, I don't know what is.
Nicholas has a good point. Says we need Christ. Term limits won't do much, if anything. And I can agree with that to an extent. But you know what? A lot of these filthy, horrible, rotten people. Nancy Pelosi is a perfect example. You know what? She's a Catholic. She's a diehard Catholic. If you were to ask Nancy Pelosi if she thinks she's evil, she doesn't think so. She thinks she's a good Christian Catholic woman. And she's one of the most disgusting, debased, lying, horrible human beings that I can possibly imagine. But if you were to ask her, she's a Christian.
Good old Chucky Schumer is up there too, though.
I think is he a Catholic too, or something?
I'm not sure if he's a Catholic. He's the current minority Senate leader from New York. Good old Charles Chucky Schumer.
Yeah, no, I think I know.
That guy. Oh my goodness, and him and Jerry Nadler.
Oh God, Nadler.
Nadler is like the ultimate parody.
Yeah, no, he is.
You could put him in a SNL skit, and you'd be like, wow, that guy is the most amazing skit actor of all time. Like he embodied that.
Yeah.
He's like,
no, if you go look at like every single like political cartoon from the 1920s to 30s of the typical fat cat, it's Jerry Nadler.
Yep.
Whatever political cartoon they were doing about the Rockefellers or the fat cats, they all look like Jerry Nadler. I challenge you, go check it out.
Well, the irony is he's no longer like super fat Jerry Nadler. He's just kind of fat Jerry Nadler.
Yeah, he used to be super fat. Like now he's kind of
like big time.
I don't know. Yeah.
So I actually watched an interesting. There was an episode that I forget what show it was. They were looking at like Trump's past in New York and stuff.
Right.
And apparently, him and Jerry Nadler have had a beef, or actually, Jerry Nadler's had a beef with Trump going back to when he was on the city council, like literally 40 years, like 30 or 40 years ago. And I thought it was kind of interesting during like the impeachment process, how Nadler was like so just hyped up to be doing this stuff. And I'm like, wow. So Trump embarrassed him back in, the 70s or whatever it was. And he's been holding this grudge. And now he thinks he's got the chance to get payback.
Right. Right.
Although, speaking of parodies, good old Adam Shifty Schiff he's a parody too.
Oh my God, he's the worst thing to happen to American politics in all of human history. I'm sorry.
I don't know if I go that far, but he's up there for sure.
I don't know. I can't think of anything worse. I mean, maybe short of John Wilkes Booth himself. I can't think of anyone worse to human history and politics than this man. Seriously. Okay, McCarthy's up there too, but we only say that because we make him a typecast to McCarthy. So I mean, I don't know. He might be worse.
No, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, Schiff is. I mean, he's about as shady as they come. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he straight up stone cold lied for 3 years straight.
Full blown lies. Yeah,
with a straight face while being called out on being a liar. Like, hey, I've got evidence that you're full of crap. No, I'm 100%. like what? I literally just showed like before you came on, while you were in the green room, I showed the evidence of why you're a liar. It's although I tell you the funniest, did you see the video a couple last year of I call him Fart Swell now, but Eric's Swalwell.
Oh yes, Swalwell.
Did you see that like the people that like did the infrared with the fart cloud?
Yes.
Dude, when I saw that, I haven't laughed out loud that hard in a while. I probably watched that thing like 10 times, just laughing my tail off of like, woo, you cannot recreate this. This is too good. This guy is forever branded Fartswell. I mean, you got the name for it. You got the cloud behind you, even though it was, an After Effects. In fairness to him.
Oh my God, it's so funny.
Oh man, that was too good.
No, it is. It is. The Democrats are turning into a circus too. I mean, they really. I mean, look at what Nancy Pelosi with the. I find it really sad too. Nancy Pelosi showed up wearing these scarves, these traditional.
Yeah, I saw that.
African dress. And I know, and in fact, I think someone did a video on it today. I didn't click on it, but I think someone did a video on it today. It might have been Blaze TV, of just how offensive it is to kind of kind of like in Scotland, how they have different patterns and different plaids. Yeah, different patterns are different tribes and stuff, and they mean something to different people. So like if you're just wearing a typical plaid and you go over there, you're going to be looked at a freaking degenerate. You're a cultural degenerate if you do that over there, because it's supposed to mean something. It's kind of the same thing there. Like those colors and those patterns and those certain things, they mean something to certain people, and they have no clue what they mean or what they're representing. They're just using it as some sort of token, to try to wager support. And it's such a disgusting display. I mean, the narcissism. It's like that old, like typical stereotypical 80s politics. Like Nancy Pelosi never grew out of the 80s politics. She's still playing the same game. Like it's all pretense and pontification and no substance, and she thinks she's getting away with it. It's crazy, man.
Well, the irony is that she is pretty well the golden goose in San Fran, though.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, a buddy of mine lives in San Francisco, and he used to live here in Nashville. Got a job out there, and we talk every couple months, and it's amazing the stuff he tells me. It's like, dude, you would not even believe just how insane this place is. I went and visited him last year, and walking around San Fran and like watching people literally take a dump in the middle of the street.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah.
I'm like, okay. I mean, I'd heard about it, I'd seen some of the pictures and stuff, but I'm like walking around downtown. I swear, right in front. So there's this gigantic. You're in California, you may have been. Have you ever been to like the LinkedIn building where they have like giant coffee shop?
No.
Okay. The biggest coffee shop I've ever seen. The place, like it is literally the size of the entire bottom of this skyscraper, right? Freaking gigantic.
Okay.
Huge, probably 30-foot glass windows in the front. I mean, it's massive. Right? This dude, I'm waiting in line. This dude comes up and literally takes a dump in front of the LinkedIn building.
No.
With the giant glass windows. So there's probably like 400 people in this gigantic thing. Yeah. And everybody is like, does this, head turn to observe, pants drop, and boost.
Wow.
And he like pulls up his pants and like walks off. And I'm like, what? Anyway, I'm a pretty heavy active chess player, and I'd like there's this like the oldest chess club in like original chess club in the United States is in San Fran. Right. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go check this out. So I'm like wandering around and like walking through gigantic clouds of smoke, everybody getting stoned, and then I'm like, coming around a corner and like I saw somebody like shooting up, like sitting on a bench in downtown San Fran. And I'm watching this dude like got the whole belt on his arm, like shooting up some heroin or whatever. And then, keep going a little bit further and you're like having to dodge, like stepping in human feces.
There's just no.
And I'm like, what is this? Like, this is a whole nother level of just absolute madness to allow this to continue. And
just no public decency at all, and that the sad thing is it tanks the businesses. No one wants to go to the businesses. They have a hard time struggling and surviving. Plus, they're taxed. All the businesses there are taxed out of their minds to pay for the services to promote these people to continue to destroy the businesses. It's grotesque.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, as we say, the suspension of rational thought. Like, you don't think that it's a negative if people are taking a dump in the middle of the street? You don't think that can affect people? Right. Yeah, I'm going to go check out the store where I have to worry about stepping in crap when I walk out.
No, I know. They've lost conventions. They've lost tourism. They've lost piles of money because of their inept management of the city.
Yep. Well, and obviously just the cost of living is reaching such an insane level. My buddy lives out in Oakland, and I think he's paying like $3,300 a month for his apartment in Oakland. I mean,
yeah.
You think about that. Of course, he's making good money, and he can, quote unquote, afford it. But it's still that whole aspect of even if you can afford it, paying that much for a small apartment, that's got to hurt.
I haven't actually heard anything about Oakland. Was Oakland set on fire or something? I didn't hear anything about
I don't know. I would imagine so. I can't
I
imagine.
would imagine so. I kind of would too.
I can't imagine Oakland. You know what? Let's find out.
Let's find out. I actually
Did
thought the same
Oakland
thing.
have riots?
See, you're being nice about it. I'm putting as Oakland burning. That's what I put it.
Let's see. Let's see. Is Oakland on fire? Okay, looks like normal fire. Let's see.
Yeah, I don't see anything.
I still would be surprised if there wasn't something that went on fire. Man, we were walking down towards Berkeley. Nobody like walked out of his apartment. It's probably like, I don't know, 6 o'clock. I'm still light, and we're walking around. Went down to a bar, and he's like, "Okay, dude, it's time for us to go, man." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, we got to walk back now." And like, okay, so we're like walking back, and he's like, "Yeah, as soon as it's dark, nah, we're out of here." He's gotten to the point where he has his car broken in so many times. It's the funniest thing. And apparently, it's like a whole deal in San Fran now in like certain areas. You leave your car completely unlocked, totally empty, and if you're smart, you put a sign on it. It says, "The car is unlocked. Please don't break my window." And people get in, check it out, and leave. It's crazy.
Wow.
He's like, "Man, I spent more money getting my windows replaced."
Right?
It's like, this is ridiculous. So I just left the car unlocked. Said, "Screw it."
Yeah, no, there's definitely riots up there. We were right.
Yeah, it's almost guaranteed. Oakland, guaranteed.
Yeah, there's stuff all over the place. It looks like San Francisco itself too. So yeah, the whole Bay Area is all in a mess. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, Seattle, Portland, Oakland, San Fran, LA, San Diego. I mean, everybody, all the major spots got hit for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I even know out here, LA, down closer to me, stuff was crazy going on. People were storming the freeways, breaking windows on cars that were on the freeways, chasing. I mean, cops were running. Man, I saw the cops pull up to the freeway to where the protesters were. The protesters pushed the cops and busted the windows in the cop's car. Cop ran away. He's like, "Oh, peace."
Yeah. Yeah, they don't. People take for granted the whole thing. Like, there's 500 people coming for you.
Yeah.
See ya. Holla.
Yeah, bye.
I'm out.
Right.
I remember one. I think it was in LA. There was 2 cops, same kind of thing. Some dude was like on the top of the cop car, and he like drove off, and the dude who was on the roof like fell off the car, obviously, as the cops peeled away.
Right.
And like on the news, like the anchors were all like against the cop, and like, "Man, it's just horrible he drove off on that guy." It's like, did you not see the gigantic swarm of zombies that were like coming for him?
Right.
What were his options? Drive away or let them surround him? And then I just get to make the choice. Am I going to like literally run over people or die?
Exactly.
What are my choices here?
Exactly.
It's
it's scary. I mean, and imagine yourself in that situation. You're surrounded by a whole bunch of irrational, angry people with blunt objects. Who wants to stick around to see what they might do?
Mm-hmm.
It's a scary thought. It is. I mean, God bless the poor business owners that actually sat out there and were defending their businesses. If I'd known any business owners out here that were like that, I would have gone with them to defend it, because my word. But we haven't had any riots out here. Well, no, I take that back. No, I think we did have one, like someone did something stupid down in Palm Desert or something like that. But for the most part,
relatively tame compared to the madness of LA.
Yeah, no, relatively quiet compared to the rest of the nation, I mean, I saw some protesters, I think, driving up the street in my town, which I haven't seen much in my town at all. But driving up the street, I saw some at a corner, probably 20 people holding signs, Black Lives Matter and all that stuff. But they were just out there, normal, typical, peaceful protesting. I didn't care about that,
It's amazing. Like as soon as the sun sets, it's like a totally different. It's actually like the zombie apocalypse.
A little bit, yeah.
And of course, I guess in The Walking Dead, I guess the zombies do come in the daytime too, but it's much more prevalent at night, right? So it was so I forget which town. Somewhere in California, it was like Utica or some small town.
Right.
Did you see the videos where like, a bunch of Antifa guys showed up, and then it's a gas station, and a bunch of local dudes.
Oh, and they got the
snot
crap
out of them.
out of them. Yes.
The best part about that video though was when the guy's running away. He's like, "Hey, bro, you forgot your shoe," and like brought it over to him. And get out of here. They're like, that's too good. You have just whooped some tail when you're like, "Hey, dude, here's your shoe. Bye-bye." Man, I was cracking up when I saw that one.
The leftists do not want conservatives policing themselves. Like, they want cops. They don't realize what they're asking for.
Yeah.
Seriously. Like for us to go back to some sort of old West type of law where we just have like one marshal that shows up in extreme circumstances or to track down for posses or fugitives, and everything else is just basically self-governance, to resort back to that would be the extinction of lefties and a good portion of the population of America, and particularly the unsavory ones, because now you won't have highly trained officers dealing with the reprobates of society. You'll have normal people, and normal people can be jumpy, especially when they're wanting to protect their family and what's theirs, and they don't have all the benefits of all that training. So lefties, before you rush to defund the police, realize that it will only be a path to just unlimited blood on your side. It will not be good for you.
Well, I think portions of them actually do recognize that. I don't know if you saw the stuff this last couple of days where there's like a significant push by Antifa and some other folks to like, they're recognizing this and like, we've got to buy guns and get ready.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, this is going to be to your point, honestly,
well, and that's why I think
if it goes that far, it's going to be an absolute, it'll be a bloodbath.
And I think that's why it is so essential that they are kind of classified as a local terrorist organization, so that they can start being treated and dealt with accordingly. We don't allow terrorist organizations to operate or network inside the United States. It's just a matter of civil societal law and national protection. So we just don't allow things like that to happen. So once an organization and its methodologies and ideologies have been targeted as a terrorist entity, they're now on the watch list, and anyone not only is all their methods of networking cut off, but any methods of networking that are discovered are tracked down and they're dealt with. So, I mean, it's very important for us to recognize this extremely leftist fringe group for the extremely dangerous threat that they are, just to society and civility as a whole. Our civility hangs on the thread of us maintaining this level, this equilibrium of respect and public trust in the officers above us. And if that breaks apart, there's nothing but increased violence and increased death from what we've seen. And it's going to carry forward to them. They think it's going to stop with them. They think they're going to win. They think they're going to be on the winning side of history, and everyone will bow to them, and they'll be the ones to use violence and finally succeed. And that's not how it ever works. That's not how it ever goes. It will fall back on them.
They may win for a short period. I mean,
but it always comes back on them, because
eventually they lose, and it's a bad. The outcome is always a bad one.
Whatever methods they're willing to indulge, they have no reason for them to not be used on them. And so they open the gateway of horror on themselves, because their opposition will just see the same essential code that they've done, justifying the ends by any means necessary, and they'll do the same thing. If we don't find a way to convince them to bring this back to a conversational level, they're going to usher in their own destruction one way or another.
Well, I think, so I don't know if I told you this, but I grew up in England on an Air Force base.
I think you mentioned that.
And so I was old enough to, I remember like IRA bombings and all that kind of stuff. And it was a legit deal. Like when you went to London and stuff, like there was a very strong probability there was going to be a bombing in London. Right. And I'll never forget. It's actually kind of funny. growing up pre 9/11 and everything, we come back to the States to visit family. The Gatwick and Heathrow airports had more hardcore security than what we have now, or we had post 9/11. Like that was like the norm. Because those airports got bombed so much, it was nuts. But thankfully, I lived up in East Anglia, so we were like kind of separated from where most of the terrorist stuff happened. But it was pretty much a daily or weekly thing, right?
Right.
And when I look back on that time, from here now that I'm back in the States, I'm like, man, Americans, we just have the average American has no perspective on that kind of. Like, we have things like it's happening right now. Usually that's, years, if not decades, separate any kind of major civil unrest.
Right.
And then it goes away. It's, usually, right? And, cool, a couple, a week, a couple days, whatever. And then it's back to, everything goes back to normal.
Yeah.
No extenuated stuff. And the point you were making on the, the eventual ramifications, I mean, the Sinn Féin group, the political arm of IRA, I mean, they kind of finally realized, like, we're not going to win this one, but let's see if we can, play the odds while we had the best chance to get the best deal. And, they got a pretty good relative truce out of the deal,
Absolutely.
And when I used to read the stories about, the news articles and stuff when I was growing up, about the stuff that was going on in London to an extent, but mostly in like Northern Ireland itself. I mean, the crazy crap that was going down, dude. Like one of the primary methods, in between the Catholics and the Protestants was, they didn't like you. I mean, you get grabbed and they do crazy stuff like take a drill and like drill out your kneecaps from the back and all sorts of crazy stuff. It's
crazy.
Like,
yeah, no.
Can you imagine if that was like happening on the streets of a city here in the United States?
No.
I mean, it's just a mind bender.
No,
cool. I don't like you. I'm going to pin you down and drill your elbow.
I can't imagine such a thing. That's radical.
No, I can't imagine being the victim, but you also think about it from like the person perpetuating that.
Yeah,
like,
right.
That's just nuts right there.
No,
I can't imagine myself ever doing that to somebody.
No, there's something wrong with that person. Truly and fundamentally wrong with that person. That's disgusting. See, and this is that whole thing that brings me back to the whole claim of atheists saying that we can build some sort of morality based upon empathy. How? Where is this empathetic code for a person that can take a power drill to someone? Help me.
Yeah. Well, they like to claim that's an outlier, but I think it's been well proven to not be the case.
No, I don't think it's an outlier as much as they think it is.
Well,
but that's what they hinge on. They hinge upon painting this case that the human condition isn't quite that bad, but my God, it's that bad and worse.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah. I think about that in the context of just the as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the end.
Yeah, exactly.
When you think about that, of the way it's described, and you insert that into the modern society, if that's the level of where it's going to go to in terms of just the level of
debauchery and debasement and evil,
just violence and everything. I mean, now we have the capacity to be we could be the ultimate barbarians without too much difficulty.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're a few steps away from becoming a slave culture again. We just need a breakdown of a central economy or a rule of law, and we'll go back economy right away. We'll have slaves in a month. Yeah, I mean, think about it. I mean, in fact, if you think about it, every single zombie apocalypse thing that you ever see ultimately ends up devolving into a servant-based society pretty much instantaneously. Yeah. Everyone hoards together for resources, and you have to be there, and you have to serve the collective group in order to be there and survive. It's just a natural component of the human condition too. You can't escape it.
But you can escape it. It's just that's not going to happen. we're enlightened now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we're so evolved, right?
Yeah, that whole concept always cracks me up. We're
so civil, we're so evolved. It's that age-old idiom. We're standing on the backs of giants, thinking that we're flying. You know, we were standing on the progress of people far greater and more intelligent than us that set up all these infrastructure, firefighters, governments, laws, regulations, rules, all these people that created this wide network web of comforts that we enjoy today. And we judge them. We judge those people as being degenerates of us while we stand on their sacrifices and their pains and sufferings to bring us the comforts we have.
Mm-hmm.
It's disgusting.
You know, I find I find it rather entertaining that have you seen the studies on how like average IQ is actually going down?
No, that I did not see.
Yep, I think I want to say I think it started. Well, they claim that there was a boost in like the 20s and 30s, and then like a peak, I think in the 40s, and then have been losing. I think on average it was like 6 points a decade.
Really?
And I'm like, okay, so we're getting better, really, because the data is showing that we're getting dumber. But when you think about some of the things that we observe going on, right, and it's like, how can you possibly be this dumb? I often wonder if it's because we've really gotten this dumb.
It could be.
And are literally not being able to comprehend the level.
And you know, there might be another factor. It could be education requirements, you know, and particularly in the 20s and 30s when we were starting to really branch out into exploring classical literature and thought and philosophy. You know, we were testing the boundaries of our minds much more strictly, and going in larger scopes and requiring ourselves to learn more and know more, you know, before we kind of progress in the world. And our requirements of that
on a multitude of disciplines as well.
Oh, absolutely agreed. And anything from science, down to literature, of course, across the board. So I think that in a way, perhaps we have had a cultural dumbing down. And granted, I mean, I don't place tons and tons and tons of weight on IQ scales generally, because I think they're a little bit subjective no matter how you look at them. But not to say that there isn't some cornerstone underlying skeleton truth there, you know, but it might not necessarily be genetic. It could also have other factors. It could be cultural. And I think we don't demand much of people in our society anymore in terms of learning or basic knowledge. I don't think we do.
Well, I would agree with you on that. And I think the other one of the other additional components that could be applied to this too is there's actually been very interesting studies on the impact of technology on the brain, and how, like, for example, because we have access to instant information, it's what it seems to be indicating is that rather than store the information, our brains are just processing it in that moment and then flushing it. Now, not in every context, obviously, but it is. But they're seeing a more significant level of this in people who have, in the upcoming generations, who have never been separated from it or didn't have that. They haven't always had that component, and instant access. And because I think about it in regards to like another very fascinating study they did on. Do you ever notice how people in modern society, and even I find myself in this sometimes too, like people don't know how to get to their own house. Like they have no sense of direction whatsoever.
Right.
Okay. This is probably like 7-8 years ago. They did this massive study in London where they hooked up 5,000 cabbies to brain scanners while they were working. Okay. Half of them used GPS, half of them didn't.
Okay.
What they discovered was, and this isn't like 100% in every single context, right? But the very large majority, the ones that were using GPS, their brain, the hippocampus was not activating and they were not storing the route information.
What?
Yeah. So think about this. If you've ever been going somewhere and you're just like following your GPS, right?
Yeah.
And you get to where you're going, you're like, what turn did I make? It was like a new, Well, it's because you were following the GPS and your brain was not needing
So
to
it just
store
wasn't
it.
even firing. Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
So when you think about that, and I thought about it, when I came across that, it dawned on me of like, because I remember like in college when I was like delivering pizzas and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pre-GPS, all that kind of
Didn't
stuff.
have GPS. I had maps.
And
I
we
did
would,
the same
we'd go
thing.
look at the giant map on the wall.
Yep.
I would
I
map out.
had phone books. I had the old phone books and the town phone books, and they had maps in the back that I'd always go to.
I would like stare at the wall, map out a route for like 4 or 5 different deliveries,
Right.
and just go do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was like nothing. Like
Yeah.
I found them, and I never even thought about like
I needed the addresses on the paper, and I knew exactly where I was going. I looked at the map, I left, and if I got clustered in some sort of weird little neighborhood, I had that little reference map in my back seat, and that was it.
Yep. And when I think about it, I fast forward to today, and I'm like, huh. I recognize that the impact of that study that I read.
Oh, definitely.
And I'm like, that is beyond doubt true, because I know for a fact that I used to be able to do this, and now there's a very strong probability I couldn't. So I like stopped for a while. I like stopped using GPS just to like kind of test the theory, you know.
Right.
And sure enough, I started being able to like completely remember a route and be like, So now, like if I'm going somewhere I know like GPS signal, like I may lose phone signal and stuff.
Right.
I'll still have it running, but I won't like look at it.
Trying to train yourself out of it.
And I'll be sitting there mapping out, like, okay, I turn left, turn right. And like, as I'm getting close to wherever I'm going, I'll be like, okay, on the way back, I got to do I'm like running the reverse in my head as I'm driving to like make sure that sucker is in my hippocampus. Exactly. So I'm going to have access to that short-term memory. You know?
There you go, dude.
And but when you think about that in the context of, the plasticity of the brain and the ability for like the brain to rewire itself for different efficiencies and stuff, when you think about that in terms of, okay, in adolescence, when you have some of them, outside of, early childhood, when you have some of you're basically still in relative download mode of learning, right? And brain restructuring and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
If we're no longer teaching logic and critical thinking skills and like that true ability to analyze and form your own conclusions and all that kind of stuff, it's not figurative, it's literal, that we are not helping these kids' brains structure and them to build the capacity and the functionality to be able to be analytical and to have thought and original thinking and everything. And then we wonder why when they get to college, and that just gets perpetuated even more, they buy into all this stuff. And then when they get into the real world trying to get a job, why so many employers are like, these people cannot put one, and they can't figure out 1 + 1 in terms of like analytical thoughts and like coming to conclusions and stuff. And we wonder why this is happening.
Philosophy and critical thinking have never been high priorities or valued topics in public education, even private education, really. I don't think there ever was much of a stress, at least not anywhere in the last 50 years, of pushing children to develop their own ideas. Just it kind of, for some reason, education shifted from pushing children to develop their own ideas to just follow the ideas of that we already have and have structured. Like the culture changed, the structure of the education changed, and I do think we stopped challenging kids as much. We somehow started fixating more on scholastic adherence as opposed to encouraging deviation and free thought and exchange. Something changed. Something went awry. And it really has. I think this is maybe to the point it's screwed up people's intelligence and IQ. And to your point, the ability to detect even things that we think should be rational.
Yeah, I think everything you outlined there, I mean, it's at this point, it's not even like, oh, is this the case in terms of like education and stuff? Like it's obvious. It's not even a disputed fact that there's been such a dramatic change in education, and it's just gotten worse. I mean, I'm lucky myself. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and she's smart as a whip and loves to read and all this kind of stuff, which I'm so blessed.
Awesome.
Thank
It takes after dad. There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. But when I think about like some of the stuff, I look at like some of the schoolwork she's got, and I'm like, this stuff is ridiculous.
Right.
And like, why would anybody go down this pathway of like thinking this is the smart way to teach? And
Absolutely.
some of the processes and whatnot. I'm like, so we had something that worked for a long time. We're talking about the basics, right?
Oh,
Why are
yeah.
you making the basics stupidly complicated?
Yeah.
And causing a lot of these kids to, now thankfully my daughter's smart enough, she'd be able to figure this stuff out and, not feeling overwhelmed, right?
Right.
But I'm like, I'm sitting there looking at this stuff and I'm like, and they're wondering why a lot of these kids are shutting down.
Exactly.
When you're making stuff that should be fun and easy for them to learn, you're making it hyper complicated. For no reason. I'm like, what is the reason for this?
It's the requirements. It's the state bureaucratic requirements reaching into the classroom when they're not interacting with the kids at all and saying, we know what's best. You need to teach it this way at this level with this level of curriculum. And if you're not doing it, and what happens is the teachers get cut off. And I can understand this because if you're a teacher and you want to teach your kids your way and you want to make it fun and you want to make it interesting, and the people above you are cutting your hands off and saying, no, you have to make sure this information gets in there. I mean, it can be a little defeating. I get it at some point. I mean, I'm not saying maybe she could be just a dull, crappy teacher. That's possible too. But I could also understand another side of the coin that maybe some of these bureaucracies that are saying, no, it has to be taught this way because, well, let's face it, our standards are crap.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sorry to say, but I mean, in terms of our education level in this country, it's garbage. But I don't think the people in the higher ups have any clue how to actually fix that.
Well,
they should empower the teachers better, is my opinion, I guess.
Well, earlier this year, I looked into, so there's a little elementary school not far down the street from my house. And I saw this post online about how I think it was only 14% of the kids at that school passed the math proficiency test.
Right.
And 16% passed the reading.
Oh,
and I was like, you got to be kidding me. So I went down to the school and I was like, met with the principal and some other folks. I'm like, okay, what do y'all need? Like, what's the deal?
Right.
And I know that school, basically everybody that goes to it is, low income kids because there's like and everybody else goes to a private school. Yeah. And it's that kind of scenario. And I was talking with them and they're like, well, I'll put you this way. We need a part-time reading specialist and a part-time math specialist that could work directly with the kids that are having a problem, because there's like should be all these studies on how like if they could have that one-on-one with the kids to kind of like help them get over that learning barrier, like not to say a learning barrier, but like get over the hump, if you will. You would like the data trend showed like that those kids just like skyrocketing as soon as you like had that one-on-one, got them proficient to a certain level where they like got it, and then their learning could accelerate. And she was telling me she's like, yeah, I've been trying to get this authorized for 4 years, and I keep being told there's not enough funding because we'd have to do this for everybody. We can't just do it for you. Are you kidding me? And then what really pisses me off about this whole deal, education thing, just irritates the crap out of me. So like I've messed around in politics here in Nashville a little bit, so I know some of this stuff. But the Nashville school budget this year, for example, was the operating budget was $926 million.
Oh my God.
That's before you account for the pensions, which was another like 171 million. So we're talking a boatload of money, right? $1.1 billion going to education funding.
Yeah, it's pretty up there.
But what really pissed me off was when going through the budget. Well, what do you think, in theory, what should be the single greatest line item for expense in a school district?
Oh, I imagine it would be the actual education materials, the books,
No. I'm talking not like that kind of thing. I'm talking about it's the human capital. It's all the teachers and everything. That's like the biggest line item, right? I agree with you. Like books and stuff, that's a big like supplies line item. But in terms of like,
well, I mean, really, one of the biggest items, and certainly one of the sufferings of teachers I know is that they don't have the resources to get the things that would make some lessons really awesome.
Well, and the irony of that is our school, they finally retracted this, but they'd actually made it illegal. They like forbid the teachers from being able to have like
I remember.
crowdfunding campaigns.
Yeah.
Stuff. But what pissed me off when I was looking through our budget. So theoretically, the human capital should be the single biggest line item, right? Sure enough. Okay, cool. It is. Yeah. There was almost $500 million left over after you accounted for that.
Seriously.
And I'm like, how in the heck can you have $500 million left over after your single biggest expense?
Yeah.
And somehow there's just not enough money?
Yeah, what is going on?
Yeah, you got some corruption.
What is
yin yang going down.
Yeah, what is going on?
On that one in the administrations and the school board and all that kind of stuff. And I started finding out stuff like, how in the heck do principals, their personal side businesses, have the contracts for all the vending machines? Like, what? Yeah, you like going down these rabbit holes and you find this stuff, and it's like, and we wonder why you walk into the school and the building's dilapidated, the teachers have no supplies. And then, fast forward to the next budget cycle and it's, we're going to need to raise property taxes to make sure that we can, give teachers a raise, that standard political talking point.
We need to bring the schools back to a privatized sector. In my opinion, we need to remove schools from the public sector altogether. We need to still have public standards of education, but we need to place the actual education back in the hands of privatized entities who can compete in an open market for the best education practices and principles, and will be local to communities and supported by local communities. I think that would be the only way moving forward to create an environment where we could actually have progressive education. Where kids are going to be taught. We can regulate the standard. We as a federal government at a state level can regulate the standard, but we can put it in the hands of people that will compete to make it better.
Yeah, when you remove all the potential incentive from the equation to me, I actually put together a whole model on this one time of, like in my county, for example, the per student, it's like $10,726 a year is like the average, right? Per kid.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, so let's think about this for just 1 second. Average teacher's got 20 kids. That means from a small business perspective, you could have a guaranteed $200,000 in revenue.
Exactly.
And I'm pretty sure that, let's say you spent $100K of that on operating your little small business.
Right.
I don't think you need that much, but let's say you spent $100K. You have $100K left over. I'm pretty sure.
Maybe if you include startup in that, maybe it's $100K.
Right. But it's like you've got I'm pretty sure that $100K is better than what you were making. And you now also have an incentive because guess what? The parents could now, let's say you're giving the parents the control of like which teacher gets the money, right?
Right.
Do you think you now have a significant incentive to make sure you give the absolute best possible education to those kids?
Right.
Because if you don't, parents are going to take that money and go somewhere else.
Exactly.
And I'm like, why could we not like use the same buildings? We could still have you could basically turn it into like a cooperative, basically.
Right.
So like, hey, yes, there is a principal. Yes, there are these different things. The teachers for easy math purposes, out of their $200K a year in in revenue.
Right.
Each month they're splitting the power bill and all this kind of stuff and out of that money. And how much do you want to bet that magically all the lights would get turned off at the school?
Yeah.
If the teachers had to do that, but at the same time, they're going to make sure the kids have the best stuff.
Yeah.
But they would also have the capital to do so.
Yeah.
And it's
it does even boil down to bad money management, which I think maybe part of your point is that even if they do get the money, no guarantee they'll use it well. And I guess that's probably to Nicholas's point, is that he's right. Privatized wouldn't necessarily be the only way to solve it, because privatized would still lead the opportunity for corruption if it's not enforced properly. And that's absolutely correct.
Well, and when I thought about it too, to try to account for some of the corruption stuff is, beginning of the year, teacher gets X percentage of the money, like to make sure I have all the initial operating costs and all that kind of stuff, and then it comes in chunks. I mean, I'm not suggesting that there still couldn't be corruption, but there's always going to be corruption at some level.
Oh no, there will. Yeah,
no, and that's why I say you're creating the incentive factor for people. It's like, hey, you do realize you don't have to be corrupt. Yeah. Like, what's left over is yours, as long as you meet these standards. And if you don't, you ain't getting that money.
Exactly.
It's like, this isn't rocket science here.
No, absolutely. No,
so
I agree.
It's a well-proven concept. And are there always going to be the scumbags and the bad apples? Yeah,
of course.
I mean, I need to operate from any perspective that somehow we're going to be able to do away with all the bad actors. Like, that's just fantasy land, right?
Oh no, it is just fantasy land. It is. And Nicholas, to answer his point, he says private is already available, and I wonder if most parents could budget better and go that route. Nicholas, I will tell you from experience, for sure they can. My family was not well off. We worked on a farm when I was growing up, and my family afforded and budgeted to send me to private school from kindergarten all the way through high school until I graduated. So I had private scholastic Christian education my entire life growing up. So, and they weren't wealthy, but they budgeted because it was a priority, because they wanted me to be educated in a very specific fashion, and it was worth it to them. I just don't think most parents these days care that much.
Well, I would agree with to extent on not caring. I think another portion of it is they just don't view it as an option.
That's also possible too. And you know what? Not just because it's private doesn't mean it's good.
Yep.
You know what? You could have nothing but garbage private schools in your area.
Yep. The capital risk is so much that, to your point, like, it could be bad. Like, the risk is too great.
Yes, that's true.
And
that's true.
Like, when my daughter goes to school, thankfully it's one of the I'm not with her mother anymore, but she lives in literally one of the wealthiest counties in the entire United States.
Right.
So, as you can imagine, the schools there are rather nice.
Right.
The public schools are nice. It's I think they're like number 3 in the United States, wealthiest average income.
Yeah.
County. And anyway, so I'm not like overly concerned about like on her particularly being able to get a good education. But if she lived in the same county as me, there is not a prayer that she would go to a public school in my county. Dude, yeah, not a chance. I would eat ramen noodles for the next decade before I would let her go to a public school here.
I'd contribute to your GoFundMe then.
But the point I'm making is, like, if you just, the whole voucher program, whatever label, you want, I mean, it amazes me how people get all worked up about the, like, here in Tennessee, for example, so our governor had gotten this whole thing initiated to do a pilot test of the whole voucher program, let people choose schools, all that.
The charter school route and all that stuff. Yeah,
it's being tested, all that stuff, and then some group just decides to file a lawsuit, and the state just lost at the state Supreme Court, and now vouchers are no longer allowed in Tennessee.
Oh man!
And I'm like, and the biggest thing, it was supposedly discriminatory.
It is discriminatory,
and I'm like, you're giving people who didn't.
How do you not get the free will opportunity to educate your children where you want? That's like the government holding a gun to your head and saying you have to go to our institutions, or you can go to other institutions, but you have to pay for it. Like, why can't you pay for it wherever I want my child to go? Why am I not entitled to choose where my child's education comes from when you say it's your responsibility to provide education? Like why does it have to be your choice in the education? Why am I as a parent not allowed to choose and you help me? I don't get it. It is discriminatory.
Have a great night, Angel. Thanks.
Yeah, night, Angel. I'm about ready to take off too. In fact, I have to pick someone up.
Yeah, it's getting late. It's 12:15 my time, so that's probably a good time to cut it all for everybody.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for hopping on and having.
Hey man. Yeah, really appreciate it. Yeah, really, bro. Thank you so much. And our rematch is coming up. So I guess they're deciding on a time. So I'm excited, bro. I hope you're up for it.
Oh yeah, it'll be good times.
Sweet.
Looking forward to it, man.
All right, man. Well, you have a good night, brother. Thanks so much, man. God bless.
Same to you. All right, everybody. I'm calling it a night. As thanks for hanging in, listening to all of our discussions. I think we went off on a whole bunch of really cool, interesting topics. Didn't anticipate going all those routes, but I'm glad we did. It was fun, and as y'all are contemplating different things of this nature, whether it be from evolution, creation, intelligent design, politics, education, always remember that everything that you do, always make sure that your decisions are logical, plausible, and probable. Have a great night, y'all.